The Dark Man. I met my best friend Ben when I was 19. We studied a degree in music together and had absolutely nothing in common, which we loved about each other. What stoked us how in sync our childhoods had been. From being born 2 weeks apart to the age of 12, we shared a lot of experiences, even though we never met. I remember Ben telling me about the VHS he used to have with Huxley Pig and Will Quack Quack cartoons on it, saying how obscure it was and how he loved it. I replied that I knew exactly which VHS he was referring to, and also still had a copy of it. This sort of thing happened a lot between us, so we liked to quiz each other from time to time and joke about how different we were from our identical upbringings. One night, when I was staying over at Ben's house, we got on the topic of kids' ghost stories. I love creepy stories, but Ben hates them, so the conversation was slow going at first. We started with the usual stories kids in the neighborhood spared. It was funny how many of our town's stories were exactly the same, for being opposite sides of the city and river, 10 miles from each other. The dilapidated places were always haunted. We had both heard about a one-eyed black cat nobody owns that watches the children play out. The list of stories went on, as did the similarities. Ben got surprisingly into the discussion. So, have you ever heard of this story? To which I confirmed, or told my time slightly different version of the story. That's how the night progressed. After we exhausted the conversation, he ended with, "Even to this day, I'm still scared of the Dark Man, so please, tell me you've heard about that story too." I just remembered being dumbfounded, saying I had no idea what a Dark Man was. As far as I'm aware, the Dark Man story is just in Ben's town. We tried looking it up on the internet, but Ben was too easily freaked out by pictures and scary stories that popped up as we searched. The Dark Man really grabbed my attention. Usually kids' ghost stories go into so much detail, like the color of the ghost's dress, or exact way the hair hangs over the ghost's eyes. But there wasn't much information about the Dark Man. The details were vague. His words at the time were something like, "The older kids who were allowed at the streets told us about the Dark Man, who stood around in the alleys at night. And the older kids were shamelessly scared to go there when it got dark." Obviously, it was thugs or druggies, I explained. But he was adamant. No, because they ran away when they noticed the kids watching them. They'd climb up high walls of the back alley into people's backyards really fast, without making a noise. The older kids wouldn't talk about it unless pushed. He said their feelings seemed too real to make it a joke to scare the younger kids. His childhood friends, Wes, claimed to have saw one too. The story goes the Dark Man would be found standing in small groups, or more often, solitary in the middle of an alley, looking for scraps of food, not doing much else. Ben usually thinks he saw one with his mom one day, walking back from the shops. Apparently, it was in a fenced-off area, where the blocks of flats had been demolished a few years earlier. At the opposite side of the land, he saw a skinny, hunchback man cupping his hand full of water from a stream which ran through the plot, washing his long greasy hair, almost ritualistically, even though he didn't see the homeless man's face and was quite far away to make out details. He swears something about the man wasn't quite human. I blamed the child's imagination and a retrograded memories, but he swears it. He showed me the area that morning. If he and his mother are remembering correctly, I have no idea why even a homeless man would wash his hair in a dirty stream. I first met Wes a few weeks after the night I learned about the Dark Man, and didn't hesitate to ask for his first-hand account of the Dark Man. It was the main reason I decided to meet him after all. His description was similar to Ben's, but his encounter was far more close up. Wes lived further from the local corner shop than Ben, and used to take the shortcut through the alley when he walked there. The wheelie bins were out that day. He said he could hear a cat or dog feeding on some discarded food behind one of the bins. It happened a lot, and everyone knows to keep the distance so the dog won't get aggravated and attack. But Wes said the dog didn't look right. He only got a quick glance before it ran behind a wall, with a roasted chicken hanging from its mouth. According to his memory, it was running more like an hyena than a normal dog, with its shoulders held much higher than its hips. The snout was too short, and the ears were more elfin than dogs. He can't remember if the creature had fur or not, but it definitely was naked. Not long after, he overheard the older kids talking about the Dogman and realized what he had saw. I like Wes. He has a doubting attitude akin to me, and admitted his story may have been influenced by the older kids' stories. It could have been just a normal dog struggling to carry a whole chicken away, being startled. The story lay dormant, not mentioning for months after I spoke to Wes. In that time I'd moved away, and have only managed to visit Ben 3 times since then. The last time I met him, we decided to go to a local takeaway, in early hours of the morning, and I got my very own encounter of what could have been a Darkman. Right on the same abandoned plot where Ben saw the homeless man bathing, there was a decent-sized fire burning. I could make out possibly 3 silhouettes hurled around the flames. Ben's area is pretty rough, so this isn't a usual sight, but I don't know how to describe it. Those figures weren't moving naturally. My view wasn't great because Ben wouldn't move closer than we were, but I swear, those silhouettes never stood completely upright. We watched them about 5 minutes. They were hunched over, with their backs to us, warming their gloved hands by the fire with their hoods up. I remember one of them moving closer to the fire, while keeping his hands on the ground. It would have been easier to just stand and walk closer, but it shuffled away using its arms. Even about their movements were incredibly awkward. I was so excited. It had to be a Dogman. I didn't want them to spot us, so we left pretty soon after. But I forced Ben to visit the bonfire with me the next day. There was just a milk crate, set next to the charred silk on the ground. Nothing to prove. These were inhuman. Strangely, there were bones in amongst the smoldering papers, and branches that had been burning the night before. We could make out sooty handprints, and at least one of the homeless people had presumably crawled directly over the ground. The trail of handprints led away from the bonfire and faded after a couple of meters. That was all we found. We walked away feeling slightly silly, laughing at how we had probably been stalking a trio of drunk tramps. However, Ben's realization unnerved us terribly, As the hand trail faded, he pointed out a large paw print, becoming more and more prominent in the middle of the fading handprints. Then it struck me why I found the gate so weird the night before. As the man had walked closer to the fire, he placed his feet in exactly the same spot as his hands had been. We stared in shock, not sure what to make out of the trail. Then the yelps and growls of dogs fighting came from a bush uncomfortably close to us. I'm not ashamed to say we ran away, crapping ourselves. Maybe it was just a pack of dogs. We didn't care to look. And I'm never going back there to find out. Thank you all so much for listening to tonight's story. Now I'd like to take a moment to thank all of my Patreons who helped make this channel possible. Thank you, Breaker19, for all your help and support. You guys are amazing.